Hey everyone, welcome to my channel. This is Sandeep Das and now you're watching Python Advanced. In this session, we'll cover variable scope, function advanced topics, classes, packages, file handling in Python, directories handling in Python, how to use JSON in Python, request module, virtual environment, Flask and Django. So now let's get started. But before that, if you didn't subscribe my channel yet, do subscribe the channel and click on the bell icon so that you will get notified whenever I upload new videos. Okay. Now that you have done it, let's get started. Now let's talk about the variable scope. So there are three types of variable scope available: global, local and non-local. Now let's learn about each of these variable scope. The first one is the global scope. Any variable that is created inside the main body of the Python code but outside of any function, that is called global variable, and the scope of this global variable is a global scope. Okay. Notably, even if you define a variable inside a function, if you use the global keyword, it will become a global. So what are the local variables? So local variables are any variable that is defined inside a function is a local variable. Okay, and this local variable scope are local to that function only. Okay, and then what is exactly a non-local scope? So any variable that is neither local and nor global are called non-local scope. Non-local variables are used in the nested functions and non-local keywords are used to define a non-local variable. Now let me show you example so you can understand even better. Okay, so see here this code where x I'm defining as like just simple value, simple string value. I'm a global variable, and then inside a function I'm printing x as like x inside a function, and then running the function, and again I'm just running the same thing outside of the function as well. This is to prove that this x value is available inside the function as well as outside the function as well. Okay, now let's run it and see what is the output. So any code example I show during this demo will find inside our Git repo, then inside that episode 2 folder. Okay, so that if you want to use the code from GitHub, you are free to use it. Okay, now that I have told you how to find it, so run this file, that is variable underscore scope underscore function variable underscore scope underscore example.py, and you can see x inside the function. So of course the function, since I'm calling here, so this function is getting called, and in this function I'm basically just printing out the x and saying this is the calling from x, and inside the function, of course, since it's a global variable that is available anywhere in the code, it's accessible, and in the same point, if I print it outside, of course it will print as well. Okay, now what will happen if the global variable name and inside a function both have the same variable name, right? So what will be the outcome? It Python will treat this inside variable as a different variable than the global one. So inside the function, the variable that you define will get the preference over the global variable value. Okay, now let's run it and see what will be the output. So Python 3, then the file variable example, and you can see inside the function we have defined I am a local variable, and you can see it's getting as a local variable, but it's not changing the outside variable value, because you see outside function I am a global variable, so this is what you defined here, right? This value didn't change. Okay, only the inside function is printed different, but this variable stayed intact. Okay, so remember that part. If you define the global variable value as same as the inside any function as a local variable, Python will treat inside that function variable as a different variable name. Okay, so this is, you have to understand that really well. Okay, now suppose you want to make any variable that is defined inside a function, you want to make that as a global variable. Yes, you heard it right, you can do it, but to do that you have to use a special keyword called global. So suppose it's inside a function, right? It's supposed to be a local variable, but still if you want, you can make this variable as a global variable. See how I did it. So I have defined a function, that is some function, you can name it whatever you like. Then inside the function I'm saying global x, and by the meaning that x is a global variable. Okay, now I'm giving the x value as 500. Okay, and I'm printing that inside the function, so x inside the function is whatever the x value is, and then I'm calling the function outside the function, of course, and then again I'm printing the value of x. Now what will happen? You will see x value is accessible even outside the function, just because you have used this global x, that global keyword, it become a global variable. So whatever value assign here, that will be still accessible to the outside of the function as well. Okay, so now let's run it and see, and you will see x inside the function is 500, of course, because we define as 500, but even outside the function also, it's saying that x out of the function is 500, right? So that's how you can make any local variable a global variable by using the global keyword. Okay, now that you have understand the global variable, let's understand the local variable. So let me show you. Now let's try to understand about the local variable scope. So see, here is some function, the sample function I'm defining here and giving x value as 500, and I'm printing it. Say x inside the function is x, that is of course the variable value I'm giving here. And if you run that, it will work fine. But when I'm trying to access the value of x outside the function, it will throw an error. So let me run it, and so you'll understand it even clear way. And you can see it's giving error. So it's saying that name error, the name x is not defined because it's defined inside a function and you're not using any keyword such global or something, right? So that's why it's giving error and saying that x is not defined. So if we just comment it out and save it and just clear the screen and run it, it will work fine. You can see x inside the function is 500. So now you see it's working and x inside the function is x. So this is a local scope because we are defined inside the function and we didn't make it a global variable. Okay, so understand very carefully. If you try to utilize this variable outside the function, you will get error definitely. Okay, now that you have understand the local scope variable, let's understand about the non-local variable scope, and that's very interesting. Okay, so let me explain. So here you can see I'm defining a function that is outer function, and there I'm giving a value of x as like x is equal to I'm a local value. Okay, and then again inside that function of that is outside function, I am defining another function that is inner function. Now this is called a nested function. Okay, and there I'm saying non-local x. The moment I'm saying it's a non-local x, that means this is no more a local variable. Okay, but again it's also not a global variable. So if you try to access this variable outside this outer function, it will give you error. Okay, but if you try to access this one inside the outer function, it will be no error. Okay, see here I'm giving value like x is equal to I am a non-local value, then I'm printing it, I'm calling the inner function, and here the variable assignment is happening. And then again outside the inner function, I'm calling the as like normal printing x value, that is should be printing this. But what will happen, let's say it's very interesting one. So after defining the outer function, from outside of the outer function I'm calling the outer function, so that we can see the output. Okay, now let's run it and let's see what is the output. So let's clear it and see run it. You can see x is equal to I am a non-local value, and see because there x is equal to a non-local value, but since we have mentioned this non-local keyword, that means it's no more a local value, and since we have changed the value of x, that means this value actually changed to this. That is the reason I am getting the same here, like I am a non-local value here, and outside of the like inner function also x value, when I'm trying to print it here inside this outer function, simply I'm printing the value of x, I'm getting the same I am non-local value because the non-local keyword and it changed the value here. Okay, so now you understand what is the global scope, what is the local scope, and what is the non-local scope. Okay, now let's learn about the function advanced topics. Okay, and the first one here is the documentation or docstring. So documentation string or docstring is used to describe what the function does. You can see in the above example where giving the three codes, then I'm giving some line. So like this function greets someone using the name parameter, and then again at the end I'm giving three codes. So that define a docstring. So where you should explain what the function does, what kind of parameter it should accept. So what are the functionality that does, to be honest. And this is how you can improve your documentation. Okay. Now the second one is the anonymous or lambda function, and this is very important. Okay, in Python the function which doesn't have a defined name called anonymous function, and this anonymous function defined using the lambda keyword, and a lambda function can take any number of argument, but there is a limitation, it can only have one expression. Okay, now let me show you an example, it will be much more clear that way. Okay, so let me show you. The anonymous function example we will find in anonymous underscore lambda underscore function underscore example.py in the GitHub in the episode 2 folder. Okay, I'm telling you this time, but I will be not saying anymore because you just refer to always episode 2 folder for these code examples. Now see here, I'm defining a do some variable here, but I'm not giving a name to the function. Okay, a simple variable. Then I'm assigning lambda. Remember here, lambda keyword I'm utilizing here. Okay, lambda. Then the first is argument. So what are the argument I'm supplying in this lambda function? And it's supplying a and b. And then what I'm doing with the function. Now remember, you can have only one expression. So this is it. One expression is a plus b. You can do multiplication. You can do whatever kind of processing you want to do in single line. Okay. and then I'm printing do sum and supplying the 10 and 20. Now what will happen? While I'm calling this way, this variable actually calling this lambda function where a and b, so a is 10 and b is 20, and then what the function doing is adding a and b, right? So a and b, so the output will be 30. So let me show you. So let's run it, python 3. So and you can see here is giving me 30. So it's a function that you didn't give any name, you didn't write a long code, you just simply said lambda, then the parameters, and then what this doing. Now it is exactly equivalent to a function like this. See, so if you see this function, do sum, and then you are returning a plus b. So instead of writing in a two line, you are simply saying in a single line using the lambda function. Okay, so this is what it is. Okay, and now there are a lot of actually other use cases also of this. Now let me explain you a bit of that. Here you can see here that I have a list, that is my custom list, and in there I'm giving 1 2 3 4 5 6 up to 10. Okay, now I'm setting a condition that any like this list should have values that is more than 5. Now it means that 1 to 5 value will be removed and only stay 6 7 8 9 and 10. How? So you can see here in the list I'm giving like a filter function, and in that filter I'm giving like lambda, then x, that is the value that's it's getting in the iteration, and then what I'm doing, if the value is greater than x or not, and this is a actually boolean expression, it will give you the true or false. Filtered list will get stored in the my filtered list variable, and I'm simply printing it. Okay, so let me run it so I can show you what it's doing. Now let me run the function and let's see the results. So you can see this my filtered list variable doesn't anymore have the 1 to 5 values, only have from more than 5, that is 6 7 8 9 10, and this is how I've done it. So lambda is good for like single line expressions, right? So good for filtering. Now let me show you another example. You can see it here. We can manipulate the value of any list or any set as well. So here I'm using a set variable. You can see here 1 to 10 again, and then I'm creating a new manipulated list variable. There's again manipulated list of the set, and here I'm giving like list, then mapping the all the sets, and then you can see I'm running a lambda function here. So lambda function taking the iteration of x and then actually doing the x plus 1, that is a doubling of. Okay, and this is the like main variable is applying here. Now in this manipulated list you will see all these values will have doubled values, so it will be 1 will become 2, 2 will become 3, 3 will become 4. So this is how it will double up. Okay, so now let me execute this file so you can see the results. So python 3 and anonymous function, see all values double up, right? 1 become 2, 2 become 4, 3 become 6, because here we just increase the value. So you can manipulate the value using the lambda function as well. Now let's learn about the recursive function. Now what exactly is a recursive function? So in general a function can call another functions, right? But in Python a function can call itself. Okay, and this is called a recursive function, that is a function that call itself. Okay, now let me show you example so it will be much more clear to you guys. Okay, you will find the recursive function example in the recursive underscore example.py file. Here I'm actually doing a factorial calculation. So here I'm defining a function called calculate factorial of x. So whatever parameter is applying, a number value, and here if x is equals 1, then it will return 1 because no more remaining. Else it will return x into calculate factorial x minus 1. So what it means that this function will keep running till x become 1. Okay, that's how we are calculating, and here I'm giving a number 4, then the factorial number will just I'm supplying calculate factorial, that is I'm calling the function and supplying the number and it's getting it. Okay, so how it works again in more simple way. So a factorial is like suppose 4, then 4, then into 3, into 2, into 1. The final value will be the factorial number. So here, same way, you can see first the value came in the x, and in x it will be 4. Then it's not satisfying this condition, so it will come to else. In there, it's getting return x, that is a value 4. Then calculate factorial x minus 1. That means that x is now what? X minus 1 is 3, right? So 4 into again 3, right? Again the factor will happen. What will do? It will come here x, and the x value is now 3. So 3 into then 3 minus 2. So this is how it will get multiplied and multiplied, right? So this is how it will keep multiplying till x value become 1, okay? And this is how we are getting the factorial value of the number. Now let me run it so you can see the results. Now let me run like Python 3 and the file name is the recursive example py and I'm entering it. Now you can see it's giving me results like factorial of 4 is 1 into 2 into 3 into 4, that is 24, which is right. I hope now you understand what is a recursive function. It's simply a function that is calling itself is a recursive function, okay? Now let's learn about the nested function. So a function defined inside another function is called a nested function. Now let me show you a quick example. So you can see here I'm first defining a function called greet. So greet, now name. Inside that greet function I'm defining another function greet first name. So in this function I'm doing very simple printing. So print hello, the name parameter that is supplied in the greet function, okay? That is the parent function. And after the function definition is done, I'm calling the greet first name. So what will happen that when I'm calling greet function here, then I'm supplying Sandeep or whatever name you want to supply there, that will first come here, and then this is just the definition of the function, it will not execute, right? Here you are executing the function, okay? There the print hello will happen and you will see like hello Sandeep. Now let me execute and show you. So simple Python 3 and the file name here is the nested function. So just run it and you can see it's printing hello Sandeep. So it first go to the greet function, then inside the greet function you are defining the greet first name. There you are calling the greet first name. That is the reason it's calling the like inside the greet function you're calling this, right? Definition is of course there. That's why it's printing the print hello world, okay? Because you have defined inside that function. Now that you understand what exactly is the nested function, let's learn about the closures, and very important part here, okay? So what exactly is a closure? In Python, closures are the nested or inner function that are enclosed within the outer function, just like a nested function example I've shown. Closure can access variable present in the outer function scope, just like any normal nested function. It can access these variables, but this is different, okay? It can access this variable even after the outer function has been completed execution. Now, important part here to notice that you can access the variable even after the outer function, that is you already executed, is over, no more running, but you can still access the variable value. Now let me show you an example so you can understand how exactly a closure works, okay? You can find the closure example in the closure underscore example.py file. So here you can see it's a very simple function where I'm defining greet name, and then in the inside the outer function, this is the outer function like greet. Inside this greet function I'm defining another function, we're calling it greet first name, which is the inner function, okay? Because this function is inside the greet function. You can see this function we're defining here, we're calling it def greet first name. So the function name is a greet first name. There you're just simply printing the name here like hello then name. But the different, you will see that I'm not calling this function, I'm just simply returning the function itself, okay? So this is what exactly is a closure. So it's not executing right away, but you can utilize later on. And this value or this variable what you supply while executing this outer function, is still this variable value will be accessible to inside the greet first name function or any inner function. That is what closure is. So in the example you can see it's printing the first name, the like this is the variable where I'm simply storing the inner function here, okay? You can see greet Sandeep, which will return the greet first name, but it will, this function will have the value of this Sandeep because we have supplied here, and it can print the my name as well, okay? So print first name is actually equals greet then Sandeep, and I'm simply, if I suppose you want to call this function because you have defined as inner function and you're returning it in the outer function, so you can simply call this variable. Is this variable become a function, right? Because you can see it's print first name is actually is the greet first name function itself. It's an instance of the function. You can like if you want to be more clear, okay? Now we can simply call this print first name and it will print the hello then my name, that is Sandeep here, okay? So let me run it so you can understand in even better clear way. So Python 3 then closure example, see that hello Sandeep. So even though the greet function execution is completely done, this variable name is available inside the greet first name, and when you return it, you return with the value itself, like the value is still there, still accessible. Okay, it's not like garbage collected or dead, it's still accessible, and you can utilize it and it will do as it intended to. It will print the name that is available in the, like, supplied by the outer function. So this is what closure is. Okay, I hope you understand it. Now let's move to the next topic. Now let's learn about the decorators. So a decorator is a design pattern in Python that allow us to add a new functionality to an existing function without modifying its structure. The decorator acts as a wrapper to the function. It is called a meta programming also because a part of the program tries to modify another part of the program to in compile time, right? And use cases we'll find in the web frameworks such as Flask and Django, which we'll cover at the end. So stay on. And logging and execution time tracking, we can utilize this kind of decorator function. Now let me show you an example so you can understand it even better. Okay, you can find the decorator example in decorator underscore example.py file. Okay, here you can see I've defined a function. Okay, that is greet first name. Again, it's very simple, like print then hello name. What is unusual here, see here, format greet. Okay, so this is simple function. If you just simply, like, let's just comment down everything, and if you simply run this one, okay, and let's say this greet first name, and just give it a name called Sandeep. Okay, let's save it and let's try to run it. So Python 3, then the file name is decorator example. It will simply print hello. Not much for simple function. Now let's make it an improved version, like some formatting, some kind of catchy, okay, catchy way, and we can do that via the decorator itself in a very simple way. I will be not changing a single line in this particular function, but still we can achieve that, like some kind of formatting here. Okay, now simply remove this example part here. Here we can simply do that via decorator function. Let me show you how the function does. So you can see a decorator function is where the parameter itself is a function. So you can see here the parameter, I'm giving a function parameter. Okay, and I'll be showing explaining everything in simple steps, so don't worry on that. First, try to understand about this two function. Okay, there is the outer function and there is inner function. Outside, there is the outside function. It is a format greet where I'm accepting a function that is the any function parameter. Inside that, I'm defining another function that is inner func, and here the parameter is name. Now there you can see print. Okay, print, then I'm just like trying to make it a little bit cooler, and then I'm calling the function name here and supplying a parameter, that is this name parameter. This is function itself, and then again just closing with something cool, and then I'm returning the inner function itself. So you can see we are adding additional functionality to the existing function. Okay, so you can see here we are adding additional function to the existing function. Okay, like some cool, like this kind of whatever you want to do, and then you are returning the inner function. Okay, so that way it will look cool when you print it. Okay, so you can see here we are defining a variable that is pretty greet equals, we are assigning function greet, that is the outer function, and inside that function you are supplying greet first name as the parameter. So this way we are enhancing this function's ability. Okay, as a wrapper, you can see the wrapper function to the greet first name, where it will simply return this inner function. Okay, so pretty great, that is ultimately giving me the inner function, where inside the function we are calling the outside. So you can see here we are actually utilizing the closure concept here, where even after the outer function execution is done, we can still utilize the variable that is supplied inside the function. That is the reason when we are actually getting the inner function, this one, we have access to the main function, which is the greet first name. And what we are doing in the inner function, we are simply calling the function and supplying the, like, additional parameter inside the function. Okay, and see the first definition of the function, that is greet first name, where we expect a name parameter, right? So that is why we are doing that here. So how you're doing it? So first, again, we just simply calling the outer function and you're supplying the inner function, which returns the inner function here. Now this function is actually the inner function which is calling the function that is supplied, that is this function is getting called here and it expects a name, right? And you are supplying the inner function a name as well. So that's the reason when I'm supplying Sandeep, it will print like cool formatting, then this function will get executed, okay, print Sandeep, and then again the print some cool formatting there, okay. Now let me run it and it will be much more clear that way. Now to run it, we have to execute python 3, then the file name is decorator example, okay. And if we do that, you can see first is a cool some formatting, then hello Sandeep, and at the end also there is a cool formatting. So this is how we can enhance one function's ability as a wrapper function using decorator function and the closure concept, okay. Now I hope you understand the decorator function. Now let me show you another cool thing, that instead of actually doing all these, like supplying here and doing all that, there is a shorthand available, so which is actually very cool. So what you have to do is, like here, while defining the function itself, like this, like comment out this function. So let's say when defining the function, just above the function you have this decorator function, right? So this decorator function you have to like add the rate of, then decorator, which actually mean that you are supplying this function to the decorative function, and you are getting this, you are calling this. So now if you just call the simple function itself, okay, it will be treated as a decorator function. Now let me run it, so it will be actually much more clear to you guys. So instead of doing all this, like supplying, like defining a variable, then supplying the this function inside this another function, instead of all that, you can simply give at the rate of sign now and mention which decorator function to use, then this function will become a decorator function, okay. And you can simply call this function, it will be still work as expected, okay. It will be still print the same way that you just tried now. So again, let's name it like viewer, or say let's say viewer, okay. And let me execute again. So you can see it's saying hello viewer. Exactly, it works the same way. Instead of defining all that and then calling it, you can simply call the function now itself, okay. Now that's cool, right? So I hope you understand how the decorator function works. Now let's move to the next topic. Now let's learn about the Python classes. So first let's understand why we should use classes in Python. So one of the very popular approaches of programming is by creating objects. Is known as object-oriented programming, or in short we call it OOPS, okay. So Python is an object-oriented programming language. One of the key objective of using classes is to reusable code as much as possible, also known as a dry concept, that is do not repeat yourself, okay. So what is exactly a class? So a class is a blueprint for creating objects. Now what is object? An object is an instantiation of a class. In more simple words, object is a collection of variables and function that act as a provided data defined inside the class, okay. Now one important note here, whenever an object call is method, the first object itself is passed as an first argument, okay. For example, you can see in the above here that dev init, and then you are supplying the self. That self is actually a reference to the object itself, okay. Now we can name this parameter anything as you want, like instead of self we can call it like a custom object or self object, whatever as you like, okay. But just in simple sense, it's the same object that you are calling the method, okay. Now let me show you the object and class in example so that you will understand even better, okay. So you can see here I'm defining a class using the class keyword, that is class my simple class, and inside the class, okay, there is a variable that is x. I'm defining x value as 20, okay. Then I'm defining another function that is print the value of x, which actually do not much, it will simply print the value of x. Now note here that this self parameter isn't actually the object, okay. So when you create an object from this class, that object variable that is x, okay, self dot x, that's why when printing in the function itself I'm saying print the value of x, the self x is equal to 20, okay. Now you can see here c is equal to the my simple class, so c is the object here, okay, where I'm using the my simple class here, okay. I'm simply calling it my simple class, and that is creating a object here. Then using the object we can call this function, okay, print value of x, and it will print the value of x is 20. Now let me run it so it will be easy to understand that way. Now run. Python, the file name is classes underscore and an objects example. So let's run it. You can see value of x is 20. Okay, so this is how we printed it. Value of x is 20, and that exactly is how it's printed. So this is how you can actually create an object from a class and call any method of the particular class. I hope you understand. Now let's learn about the constructors in Python. So class function that begin with double underscore are called special functions, out of which the most used one is the double underscore init, then double underscore, then the function symbol. Okay, all classes that have a function called init, which is always executed when the class is being initiated, and that we call a constructor function. Okay, now let me show you an example so that you can understand better. You can see here that we have defined a class that is a person class. Okay, so you can see the class keyword and the person. So the class name is person, and inside that class we have defined a underscore underscore init underscore underscore, then the function arguments. Okay, the first one is of course the self argument, that is which actually refer to the created object, and then the additional name and age. Now we are supplying in this constructor function the name and age. When you are specifying the self.name is equal to name, then which means that name parameter value is getting passed in objects name attribute or variable, and objects age attribute we are assigning value as age as we are supplying here. So we are, so the person class, when you're creating object, we are assigning two values, name and age. Now you can see in the function where you are defining dev greet person, and you are again first parameter is a self parameter which is actually the object itself. So in the constructor itself we have supplied the name and age, which is now throughout accessible in any other function or any other methods. So here you can see we are, when you are printing hello then self name, it will actually have the value of the name that is supplied while creating the object itself. This is what we used normally for the constructor function. Now you can see here P is an object where we are assigning person, this is the class name, and then we are supplying two values, that is the John, that is the name, and the age is this. Okay, so which refer to actually self, actually the object itself that is getting created, and the name is the name we are supplying the first parameter, and the age, that is we are supplying the second parameter. Now because init is a constructor function and we are supplying these two values, these two values getting automatically passed and it's assigning two values here just like we did. Okay, now if we call from this particular object this particular method, that is greet person, it will give us the value of hello, then the value that you have earlier supplied, that is hello John. Okay, now let me run so it will be much more clear in that way. Now let's run the Python 3. Now let's give the Python file name, that is class and objects, and you can see here is printing hello John. Now let's copy this statement and let's say we can see here we can access the age also. So your age is okay. Now again if we run this one where you are calling from this P object, which is the object from this person class, and we can access the method that is greet person, it will give us like hello then the John, and your age is the age that you have supplied here. Okay, now let's run it and see the value. So you can see it's giving hello John, your age is 36. So this is how we can utilize the constructor function. Okay, now let's learn about the Python class inheritance. So what exactly is inheritance in Python? So we can define a new class with little or no modification to the existing class. Okay, it allows us to define a class that inherits all the methods and properties from another class. Okay, the class from which being inherited is called a parent or base class, and the class which inherits from the parents or base class is called a child or derived class. Okay, now understand this very carefully, okay, because we'll be using a lot these terms next time. Okay, now what is the super function? So Python also has a function that is a super function, okay, which will make the child class inherits all the methods and properties from the parent. Using the super function, we do not have to use the name of the parent element. It will automatically inherit the methods and properties of its parent. Okay, now enough talk, let me show you an example so it will be more clear to you guys. The inheritance example we will find in the inheritance underscore example.py file. Okay, now here you can see we are defining a class called person. Okay, where you are like we have a constructor function. Again, you know already the self is actually point to the object itself, then the name and age are the parameters, where we are assigning the name to the name attribute and the age to the age attribute, And we have another function, that is greetPerson function, where we are simply printing the name that we are supplying in the constructor itself. Okay, now this is the parent class. Now we are creating another class, that is class patient, and there we are supplying the person. Now person is the class person, note that here. Okay, and then in the constructor itself we are first calling person init and then supplying there the values. Okay, and then we see, this is like we are extending the base class person to add new features. Okay, like it doesn't have the case data, right? So and we need the patient data. That's why the person is of course common thing. The person is now becoming patient with the case. Now we can say the case could be fever, could be cold, whatever it is, and then we are actually assigning the case value as a attribute to this patient class. Okay, and you can see the case here, we are simply assigning the value here, and then suppose we want to have new function called print the case. So print case, and there we are simply printing the patient case is self case, that value is applying in the constructor itself. Okay, now you can see here the first thing is that patient objects equal to patient, then simply giving the value of, like, the name is John, the age is 30, and the case is the cold case. Okay, now in the second line we are printing the greetPerson, so it will say hello John. Okay, and in the second line it will simply say the patient case is the case whatever you are supplying here, which is code here. Now you understand that from this object, that is the object from the patient class, which actually inherited from the person, because here you are supplying the person and you are simply supplying the values in the person class. Like this way we are giving the constructor values, and this is how we have the access to this greetPerson function, as well as we have access to the print case. So now let me run it, so it will be easy to understand you guys. Let's run the Python 3, and then the file name is inheritance. Okay, so let's run it. You can see this is success, so greetPerson hello John, and this is also success, patient case is cold. So you understand, we are accessing the methods from the parent class, as well as we can access the functions from the, which is derived class, or you can say the child class. Okay, so this is how we can utilize it. Now here you can see we are giving like person, init, and all that. So instead of actually giving the name person here, we can simply say like super function, like we talk, right? Super function, which will actually point to the class that we are already supplying here. Okay, as a parent. Now let me just simply comment this one, it will be much more clear that way, and you can see here. So let's say we are simply just giving a super, and then init, in actually the constructor function we are giving name and age, so it will simply point to the person class, because here we are saying person is the parent class, right? So this is how you can utilize a super, so you can just avoid calling the name again, right? Okay, now if we call it person, like greetPerson, this function will have access to the greetPerson function of the person class. Okay, now let me actually run it, and so you can see the result, and it will be again easier to understand that way. So let's clean it up and then run the function and then run the file again. So you can see hello John. So this is how we can utilize the inheritance, as well as we can utilize the super function. Instead of giving name, we can simply call super function. Okay, I hope you understand. Now move to the next topic. Now let's learn about the Python class inheritance. So first let's talk about the multiple inheritance. So if a class derived from more than one base class, this is called multiple inheritance in Python. Now let me show you a quick example. You will find the multiple inheritance example in multiple underscore inheritance underscore example.py file. Okay, if you come here, you will see we are defining first a sample base one class. You can see class, then the class name is a sample base one, where do we have a very simple function, sample base one function. Now you already know the cell point to the object. Okay, now print sample base one function, so it will just do a simple print that this is actually a sample base one function that's getting called. Now second class, you can see class sample base 2, where you're defining another function, that is sample base 2 function, and you know again the self is to self the object, you point to the object itself, and you're printing here inside this function that sample base 2 function. Okay, and finally we have another class, that is class multi inheritance example, Now note here very carefully, we are supplying sample base 1 and sample base 2. Doing so, you can see here we have the access to both this function and both this function or any attribute if there is any, okay, or any variable inside this class if available, we can have access to everything, okay. And now we have created one object, that is multiple inheritance object, from this class, that is multiple inheritance example class, okay, so that this object will have access to this class functions as well as, and the second class, that is sample base 2 class, both the classes, all the functions will have access by this object, okay. And to prove that, I have called the multiple inheritance object dot sample base 1 function, that's here, that is from the sample 1, and again the multiple inheritance object dot sample base 2 function, this is the sample 2 class, okay, and this is the sample base 2 class function, right. Now if you run it, okay, so you should be able to see it. Now you can see here I am printing multiple inheritance dot underscore underscore class underscore underscore dot basis. Using this we can find out from which classes this particular object's class derived from. Now let me show you. So let's run it. Python 3, then the multiple inheritance example, and if you run it, you can see it printed simple sample based 1 function from here, and it printed again the sample base 2 function from this function. You can see sample base 2 function, and this printed the class which from which this particular class is derived from, that is the sample base 1 and sample base 2. So these two parent, from this two parent class this function is derived, right. So this we can find out via this particular statement, okay. I hope you understand. Now let's learn about the multi-level inheritance. Now let's learn about the multi-level inheritance. So in Python, a class can inherit from a derived class as well. It's called multi-level inheritance. Let me show you an example. But before that, you can see here in the examples, I am using pass statements. Now what is pass statements? So the pass statement is actually a null statement. The difference between a comment and a pass statement is in Python that a comment is actually completely ignored, but the pass statement is not ignored, it just skipped, okay. Null statement is skipped but it's not ignored, so remember that part, okay. Now let me show you the multi-level inheritance example. So you can see here that we have a class that is level 1, we have another class that is level 2, and level 2 we are supplying the level 1, and we have another class that is class multi-level where we are supplying the level 2. So level 1 in level 2, you can see the level 2 actually the level 2's parent class is level 1 and multiple levels parent class is the level 2, and of course accordingly level 1 is the parent class of the multi-level, and this will show this particular class from which classes is derived from, okay. Now let me run it so it will be more clear to you guys. So let's run it, and you can see this particular is printed this one. So this multi-level class is actually derived from the level 2 and level 1, okay. So, and of course the object, the main object class itself. So now I hope you understand what is multiple inheritance and what is multi-level inheritance. Now let's move to the next topic. Now let's learn about the Python packages. So what exactly is a package in Python? The package in Python in a simple sense is a directory with Python files and a file with the name _init_dot_py. This means every directory inside the Python path which contains a file name _init_dot_py will be treated as a package in Python. Okay, a package can have sub packages and or modules. This well organized hierarchy of directories for easier access. Okay, now one thing to note here that this _init_dot_py file should be blank. Okay, don't put anything there. Always remember that part. Now let me show you example so that it will become a more clear idea to you guys. Okay, the package example will find in package_example.py file. Okay, now here you will see I have created one package. I will show the hierarchy, but just understand this line: import greeting.person.greet. Okay, now here see the hierarchy: greeting, person, greet. So there must be, whenever you see this kind of line when the import happening, this first, okay, greeting should, if it's a custom package, it should be here inside your code. This is the greeting folder. okay, greeting. Then inside the greeting folder, see a person. Now inside greeting folder, there is a person folder. You can see person, and then inside the person there is the init file. But before even going inside a person, you will see inside the greeting itself there is a init file, and it's a complete blank file. Always remember, you have to make a double underscore init double underscore dot py, a blank file. And inside the package itself, if you have any more folder which have again that init under dot py, that means it is also a sub package or package itself. Okay, now that's very important to remember. Okay, so greeting is a package, patient is a package, person is a package, and student also is a package, because each folder I put double underscore init double underscore dot py file. Okay, and that means all are sub packages or packages kind of. Okay, and these are the actually sub packages of greeting package. Okay, now you can see that greeting package itself have nothing, but inside the person we have a file called greet.py, and there's a very simple function, okay, that is def say hello. Okay, and this say hello I'm utilizing in the package example. So you can see here I just imported greeting. Okay, that means again greeting is pointing to this greeting folder, person is pointing to the person folder. Okay, and greet, it actually point to the ultimately the file, so greet.py, this one. And when if I want to access this function, you can see say hello, I can simply say greeting dot person dot greet dot say hello. This is how we can call a function from a package. Okay, now this is a long name, isn't it? So we can utilize the aliases also, because of course we can use aliases, right? So import this greeting dot student dot greet, because we have another package, we call it student, right? There we also have a greet, see, say hello. So and here we're printing say hello student. Okay, so print hello student. And so greeting, the greeting folder here, then the student, so the student folder here, and then greet. Okay, and then I'm aliasing as greet student. So greet student, say hello, it should print here hello student. Okay, so this is how the hierarchy works. This is how we can call and we can give aliases. Also, we can import a module without the package prefix itself. So say here, so greeting patient, instead of greet, we are just importing that as a greet. See, import greet, and then greet dot say hello. So again, let's go to the patient. Again, just similar level. This greeting is actually pointing to the greeting package, the main package, then patient sub package. Okay, and there we have a file called greet. So this file import, from there we actually importing only this file greet.py, and there we are saying say hello. So which means just simply say hello, that is hello patient. Now we can also use just the function. I mean, we don't have to actually import everything, right? We can just import the function itself. So in the let's say this one. Okay, so greeting, again let's go by the hierarchy. So greeting, then patient, so the patient, then greet, so this file greet, and in that file there is a function called say welcome. So in the package example, you can see you are importing that particular function only, and we are simply calling that function. Okay, so now let me run it and see the results. So to run this, python 3, and then the file name is package, so package example, and you can see, so this printed hello person, this printed hello student, and this printed hello patient, and the finally we just imported the function only there, welcome patient. So this is how the packages works. I hope you understand the packages. Now let's move to the next section. Now let's learn about the file handling in Python. Okay, now what exactly is a file? So file is a named location on a disk to store data or information, and this file is used to store data permanently on non-volatile memory such as hard disk or solid state disks. Okay, now what are the file operations supported by the Python? So Python have several functions for creating, reading, updating and deleting files. So it supports all the operations. So what is the flow of handling the file? Python will open the file, then we'll do read operation or write operation as intended, and then we'll close the file. Okay, and there are multiple way to open the file. There is R, that is read mode, A, that is append mode, W, that is write mode, X, that is create mode, T, that is text mode, P, that is binary mode. Now let me show you an example so that it will be more clear idea to you guys to how to handle files in Python. Okay, so let me show you. Now the first example is the read file. Okay, and the file name is file underscore read underscore example.py. So in this Python file you will find the read file related code. First, what we're doing here, in a variable if, we are assigning open, that is open function, to open a file, and then we are opening in R, that is read mode. Okay, and this sample underscore file.txt is here, and it's a very simple file. You can see hello there from other side. This is just a sample text file for test. Each sentence is separated by new line. You can see all are in new line. Okay, so we'll be reading this file data via the Python code. Okay, using this, the f.read function. Okay, so f hold the file object, that is via the open, then it's using the read function to get the text and we are printing it, and after the reading is done we are simply closing using the dot close method. Okay, so now let's run it and see how it works. So to run we have to use Python 3 and the file name is file read example, and if you do that you can see it printed hello there from other side. This is just a sample text file for test, and each sentence is separated by new line. Okay, so this Python code is very easily able to read this sample file, which actually stays in the same episode 2 folder. Okay, we can give the path like this, or we can actually give the full path. So if we give the full path, let me show you how do you do that. You see here, so we are giving a full path here, like full path to this particular file and opening in the R mode, and this will also work. So let me run it. It will be easier to understand. You can see we run again and it shows the exact content of this sample underscore file.txt. Okay, now clear this. You can do a lot more also. So let me just show you something that now suppose that the encoding of the file is different. You can actually mention what is the encoding of the particular file and you can open the file in the same mode if you want. Okay, so you can see here I'm opening sample file again with the mode that is read mode and encoding is UTF-8. We can using this way also we can read the file. So if we do that and if we read it, suppose, so we should be able to read the data. So let me execute again, and you can see it easily able to get the content of the particular sample underscore file.txt. Okay, using read mode we can also loop through the lines in this particular file. So this file have a 3 lines, right? Hello there, and then this is just an each sentence. So we can loop through each line using the for loop. So for x in f, now print line, that is the x, that is the line is the x value. Now the x is the actual line of this particular file. Now let's run it and see. You can see here line hello from other side line. This is just simple line each sentence. So we can loop the line as well. Okay, using Python inbuilt OS module we can actually check also that file is exist in the file system or not, or is there is no file exist, because if you try to read a file which doesn't exist it will throw error, right? So you can actually check if the file exists, then only read the file. Just simply say that file doesn't exist. So let me run and see. Okay, so if you run you can see its file is there, that's why it's able to run it. Now suppose we try to open a file which doesn't there. Okay, this is very like busy, this is a very random name which the file doesn't exist, right? So if we try to run read again, you can see the file doesn't exist. So and if we have the file, you should be able to read again. You can see. So this is how using Python you can read the file. Okay, now let me show you file writing example using Python. So okay, so here we are opening first in the append mode. Now append mode's good use case is that it will not overwrite the existing content, it will simply append to the file. Okay, now if suppose the file doesn't exist, it will create the new file and then we will add the data. Okay, so here you will see that you are creating a file, that is that this sample file 2 doesn't exist here. Okay, so once you run the code it will create a file called sample underscore file 2, and this will actually add this line. So this is line added by the Python function. Okay, and it will create a new line. So and after the writing is complete we'll close the file. Okay, So let's run and see what will happen. So Python 3 and then the file write example. If we do that, you see it created a file here, sample file, and this file has a content like this is line added by the Python function. Now this is using the append method. There is another method called write method. So let me show you. Immediately after writing, we'll open the file in the read mode and we'll see the content of that file. Okay. So this is, and you can see this line is overwritten by existing. So previously there was actually this line, right? This is the line added by Python. But as soon as we open in the write mode and added this line, it actually overwritten existing content. Okay, so use W method with caution that it will override your existing content. Okay, and it will, of course, if the file doesn't exist in the file system, it will create a new file also. Okay, and in the read mode, I just read the file. You can also check, like, instead of using read method, you can check here also, like this is already replaced the content of what you use in the append method. Okay, so this is the right example. Okay, now let me show you a delete file example. For deleting a file, we can utilize Python inbuilt OS module, and we can check the path exists or not, that file actually exists in the system file system or not. If exists, it will remove the file. If doesn't exist, then it will say the file doesn't exist. Okay, so let's see here that this sample2 file exists in the file system. So if you run this one, so Python 3, then the file delete example, and you'll see the file got deleted, right? Now if you try to delete again, it will say file doesn't exist. So this is how you can delete a file using Python as well. So we learn how to read a file, how to create a file, and how to delete a file, right? Okay, now let's move to the next topic. Now let's learn about how to handle the directories via Python. So what are directories again? A directory or a folder is a collection of files and folders or subdirectories. Okay. Now how to handle directory or subdirectories in Python? So Python has an inbuilt OS module, which I've already seen, which provide us with many useful method or function to work with directories. Okay, and subdirectories are fine as well. Now let me show you example so it will be much more clear. Okay, and the directories file is in the directory example. You can see the directory example there. First, suppose we want to get the current working directory path. We can use like import OS, and then we can like get, you can use the os dot get cwd, that is current working directory function, and we can get the, it will return the value of the path, so we can print the value. Okay, now let's run it using Python 3, then the file name is directory. Okay, and you can see it given in the current working directory. Okay, now let's do one more thing. Suppose we want to change the directory to something else. Maybe we want to see the logs, we want to get the logs or store the logs in the, say, server db or somewhere, maybe in the later, but you have to go to the particular folder first, right? Now to do that, we can actually use the chdir method. Now let me show you. So here you can see we are utilizing os.ch, that is change directory, and you are giving which directory you want to check out, and then we are printing that directory change, like just to confirm that which directory we are in. We can use the get current working directory function, and then we can change directory again to the like previous that we have saved here working directory, and which is verify that we have moved properly. Okay, so this is how we are testing out from changing one directory to again another directory. Okay, now let's save it and let's run it. Okay, you can see change to directory, that is private verse logs. Okay, and then again once this is done, we are moving to via this, see, change directory, we move to the previous one, that is actually where this project is running. So users Sandeep Das Python for Cloud episode 2 folder. Okay, where you actually have the files here. Okay, so this is how you can do the change directory. Okay, now suppose you want to see the list of directories in a particular folder. Okay, so you can do that. To do that, you have to run print os list directory. This function list directory will list out all the directories. Okay, now let me show you. So again, just simply run Python 3, then the dictionary, then the directory underscore example. You can see it listed all the files and folders in this particular working directory. Okay, so this is how you can list out all the files and folders. Okay, now suppose you want to create a new directory. How can you do that? you can create like this function using os module. We can run os.path exist is checking that path exists or not. If the path exists, then because if the path exists, you should not be creating another folder there, right? And it will be, of course, through an error. So if the path exists, it will say no, folder already exists. If the path doesn't exist, we can create a directory there. Okay, so os, that is the module name, then dot mkdir, this is a function which will create a directory called my new sample directory, and will say the folder is created or the directory is created. Now let's save it and let's let's run it. So python, okay, and you can see the folder is created. So if you can see here, this folder, new folder name was my new sample directory, and you can see my new sample directory. So it successfully created a folder. Now suppose you want to rename the created folder, you can of course do that. To do that, you have to use a function called os rename. Okay, so let me show you again. Now OS rename, you have to supply what is the existing directory name and then what is the targeted new directory name. Using that, you can rename that particular folder. So let's do that. You can see it became my underscore rename underscore sample underscore directory, as we have set in this particular section here. So this is how you can rename the particular folder. Okay. Now suppose you want to delete a particular folder. Okay. Let's say you want to delete this particular renamed folder. So we can do that via using os.rmdir, or that is remove directory function, and if you run it there, you can see the folder is actually removed, right? But there is a limitation. This particular folder was empty, right? So this rmdir function will be able to remove any empty directory. But suppose we have another file, say this one we had, and let's create the folder here. So this one, and if that has any particular file, let's say sample.txt, okay, and let's say we're giving some value. Now if we try to remove using the existing code, let's say this, see is giving error, the directory is not empty. Okay, so it will not allow to remove. We can remove this particular directory tree using the shuttle. Okay, so let's utilize that, and this will actually remove the directory, any subdirectories under the directory or any files. Okay, so directory, now here the file name is this one because we renamed it. So okay, now let's try to remove it. See, it removed the entire like folder and all its inside contents. So we have learned how to handle the directories with Python. Now let's move to the next section. Now let's understand a very important topic in Python, that is using JSON in Python. Now you might wonder what exactly is JSON. So JSON stands for JavaScript Object Notation. It's a human readable lightweight data interchange format, a syntax for storing and exchanging data. Now it is commonly used for transmitting data in the web applications. In simple word, JSON is a language independent data format. Okay, so all the language actually use so they have some kind of JSON handling libraries or modules, and they use the JSON if you want to transmit data from one application to other applications. Okay, now how to use JSON in Python? So Python has an inbuilt module that is called JSON, which can be used to work with the JSON data. Now let me show you an example. It will be crystal clear to you guys. Okay, the JSON code example is in the file called json underscore example.py file. Okay, so open this file if you want to try it out. So you can see here, first we're importing the in Python inbuilt JSON module. Okay, and then we are defining a simple JSON string. Now we're defining a simple JSON string, that is %JSON variable equals to, then in the string you can see the name is Sandeep, age is 30, and city is Kolkata. Okay, now we want to parse this particular JSON and convert into the Python dictionaries. Okay, so we can use a kind of object. Okay, now to do that, we can do like Python underscore object variable, we are storing the object variable there, is equals to JSON dot loads the particular JSON string. Okay, you can see here JSON dot loads, then the inside the parenthesis is loading the particular JSON stringified JSON variable. Okay, what this will do is this will convert the particular JSON string into the Python dictionaries. Okay, so person object is actually a dictionary in Python. Okay, and we are simply trying to print like person's age is the dictionary name, that is person object, and then the h, that is this h particular key here. Okay, now let's try to run it and see the how it works. So let's run Python, and the Python file is json example.py. If you run it, you can see it's saying person age is 30. So it's successfully converted the this particular JSON string into a Python dictionary, and from the Python dictionaries we can access the keys like this, like how usually we can access, right? Now this is how you can actually load a JSON and parse the JSON, right? Now how to stringify a JSON again, like you make some changes and you want to pass that particular new JSON to somewhere else. How can you generate that particular string? And that's very important here. So to do that, let me show you this example. So let's say I'm just in, now the age is actually 30, right? Here we are loading age 30. Now suppose we have to rectify the age, and the age should be 45. So again, the person object age is equal to 45. So we are updating the value, and then we are creating a new JSON, okay, new JSON string. So JSON dot dump. So this is the method, JSON dot dumps. Then the particular dictionary, if you supply, it will convert the dictionary into a JSON string. Now let me just print the string here, and we are checking what is the type of this particular JSON, which should be a string, because ultimately you can see here it's a string, right? And then we after the converting to normal JSON string, it will of course be a string class. Now let me run it and let's see how it works. So Python 3, and then the file name, that is JSON example, and you can see here it printed, and it's a string class. Okay, it's printed a JSON string. So name is Sandeep, age is instead of 30, it's now 45, and city is Kolkata. Now you can see here the data type of JSON dump that I am printing here is the class string. So this is how the simple JSON parsing and JSON generation happens. Okay, now important thing to note here, that a JSON values can only be one of the 6 data types, that is string, numbers, object, arrays, boolean, or null. Okay, now let me show you example. You can see here I'm defining one x variable as a object here, and there the name is Sandeep Das, the age is 30, the married is true, then divorce of course false, children is coming soon next month, the pet, that is none, it's a kind of none variable, and the cars, now cars is a list variable, you can see. Okay, and that has a, again inside that there is an item, that is an object, okay, or a dictionary. So model Maruti Desire, because I have one Maruti Desire. So these are the supported data types, and we can convert all these into a JSON string using the json.dump x. Okay, now if other data type other than this, if you try to generate, it will throw you error. So always remember what kind of data you can generate using the JSON. Okay, now let's save it and let's run it. Let's clean this up first. So you can see it generated a big JSON string, and the data type of this particular JSON dump is a string type. Okay, so now I hope you understand how to handle the JSON with Python. Okay, now let's move to the next topic. Now let's learn about the Python request module. So using request module, we can make requests to any other web pages easily. The HTTP request return a response object with all the response data, that is content, encoding, status, etc. To install the request module using Python 3, we can run like Python 3, then -m pip install request, or simply if you suppose you have any virtual environment set and you have requirement all set, so you can run pip then install then -r then the space requirements.txt. And this request module support the below method, that is get, head, post, put, patch, delete, and request. Okay, now let me show you a quick demo so you'll be able to easily understand this. So I have a request module example folder inside the episode 2 folder. Okay, there you will see a file called request module demo, and actually HTTP bean is a free kind of API testing service which actually very pretty easy to use, where using the request module you want to make a get call, or that is I have already put different kind of calls. You can try it out yourself. Just for the demo purpose, you are actually calling the get API and getting and printing the response. Okay, now I have already installed the requirements. I have the requirements here. Okay, now we can simply run Python 3, then first I have to go inside that particular folder. So cd, then the request module example, and then I can run Python 3, then the request module demo, and you can see it's showing the in this text, the response text showing me the entire response. So argument, headers, origin, URL, everything. Similar way you can make get call, put call, post call, delete call, or whatever call you want to make. Okay. Now I hope you understand the request module. Now let's move to the next topic. Now let's learn about the virtual environment Python. So we can create a virtual environment to manage the dependencies for our project, both in development and in production. So why it's even needed? So the more Python projects we have, the more likely is that you need to work with different version of Python libraries or even the Python version itself. Newer version of libraries for one project can break compatibility of another project. Now that is very risky. So virtual environment is there to rescue. Virtual environments are independent group of Python libraries, one for each project, and Python packages installed for one project will not affect the other projects or operating system packages. Okay, that is why the virtual environment is needed in Python. Okay, now let me show you how to create a virtual environment. Now to create a virtual environment, first we'll create a new folder, that is my sample project. So it will be your own Python project. Okay, now let's do it, and then you can see that file should be created here, my sample project, and in that project you have to, let's go inside a particular folder. Okay, so let's go to that folder, and then to create a virtual environment we have to use the Python 3, then dash m, that is then the module name, then the virtual environment name. So let's try to run it, and let's run it, and you'll see it's created all the, let's see, we created the VNV folder, and then all the required things it's just created. Okay, it will take few seconds and it's done. Now once your virtual environment is created, you have to activate it. Okay, now to activate you have to run dot, then VNV, then slash b slash activate. So let's do it, and you see now you are inside the virtual environment. Okay, and you have activated it, right? So this is how you can create the virtual environment. Now for the next two project we will be utilizing the virtual environment. Okay, now let's learn about the Flask, and here we will be utilizing the virtual environment as well. Okay, so what is Flask? So Flask is a web framework. It's a Python module that let us develop web application very easily. It is small and easy to extend code. It's a micro framework that doesn't include an ORM like any object relation manager or such features. It does have many cool features like URL routing, templating engine. It is a WSGI web app framework. Okay. Now let me show you how to install Flask and how to run a sample application. Okay. So the Flask app demo is inside the Flask app example folder. There I have a file called instruction, and you will find all the instructions here. I have given here the full installation article where you can follow the example, and I will show you in this here anyway. So first you have to actually create a virtual environment. Okay, cd flask. Okay, I have example. Then you have to actually create a virtual environment. For that, run Python 3 dash m vnv and space, then the name of the environment. So let's do it, and it will create the environment. Is already created, so I didn't get any logs. Now after that you have to activate it. Okay, so they can see dot vnv then slash bean slash activate. You have to activate it. Okay, so let's activate it. Now we are inside the virtual environment. There you have to run pip install. Then if you have the requirement txt here, you can simply run like this. So pip install this one. Okay, let me show you, and it will install all the dependencies. Okay, now if you don't have that particular requirement file, then what you can do is you can run pip install then the particular module name. So here module name is the Flask, so flask Flask, and you can see it already have, so it will not say. Now as soon as you install your modules, you should actually store the dependencies in requirement.txt. To do that you can utilize this pip freeze, then this symbol, and then that is the greater than symbol, then the requirements.txt. What it will do, it will save all the dependencies inside the requirement.txt. Now let me show you very quickly. So if you do that, You can see it just copied all the dependency in the requirement.txt. So if we open the requirement.txt, you can see it mentioned all the like Flask 2.0.2, all other that is the module required, it will be set in the requirement.txt. Now suppose you give this project to someone else, they can simply use the pip install then -r requirement.txt and all the dependencies will be installed for them. That easy, right? Okay. Now that all dependencies are installed to run a Flask application, we can simply run a sample Flask app. And I have this particular sample app inside the index.py file. Okay. There you can see I'm importing the Flask from Flask. We are importing the request. I'm using the JSON file. I'm not utilizing in this particular project, but in future project I'll be definitely utilizing this. Then I'm defining the app is equal to Flask, then the name. Okay. Then now we're defining the routes here. This is the route path and the function name is the home name. Now remember this particular sign, the editor, it's a decorator function. And you remember like we discussed what the decorator function does. So you're doing the same thing here and it's defining the home, then we're returning the welcome. Then the second route, what you're doing is that again the decorator function, then route, then slash hello world. Then we are defining the hello world function here. So here in this hello world application, we are getting the query string parameter user and storing the value in the user variable. And if there is any user value is there, we are saying hello username. If it's not there, we are saying hello stranger. Okay. Now at the end, we are saying if name is equal to main, that means is it the main file? If it's the main file, then app.run, then the host, that is which host should run, then the port, here the port, it has to be integer, remember that. Okay. So 8080, and we are just enable the debug mode to see what's going to happen. Okay. Now let me show you a quick example. So let's clear it. Okay. Now to run this particular app, you have to run Python. Okay. Python, because you are inside the virtual environment. Okay. So all the version 3 and everything is all set. Okay. We don't have to mention Python 3 version. Python, then index.py. And if you do that, you can see it's running successfully fine. Now let's load this URL in the browser itself. Okay. So copy this and then let's come to the browser, and if you try to load it, you can see it's saying welcome. Now suppose we have another function, right? Another route here, that is hello world. So if we try to go there, let's see what will happen. Let's copy it and let's go there. If we go there, so it will do like hello stranger, because we didn't supply any particular value in the URL parameter. Now suppose here we are saying user is equals to Sandeep. So it will say hello Sandeep. See, it's saying hello Sandeep. Now this is a very simple application in Flask, but in the future we'll have a bigger Flask application. Okay. For now, this is it. For now, understanding purpose, this file you can refer to. Okay. Now that you have learned the Flask, now let's learn about the Django. Now let's learn about the Django. So what is Django? Django is a high-level Python web framework that encourages rapid development and clean programmatic design. Built by experienced developer, it takes care of much of the hassle for the web development. So you can focus on writing the app without needing to reinvent the wheel. Okay, and it's free and completely open source. Now let me show you how to install and set up Django and run a simple Hello World application. Let's do it. Now you can find a folder in the episode 2 folder. You can see Django app sample, and there you will find the instruction. Okay, there you will find the installation related complete instruction, how to again create the virtual environment, activate it, and how to install Django, how to save all its dependencies inside a requirement.txt, all that. Now let me show you just again. Okay, now let's move from there, let's exit from this here. Okay, and there now let's go to terminal, and let's go to the Python for cloud, and there let's move into the Django. I think we are outside that, so let's move to the episode 2, then go inside the Django app example. Okay, there first step will be to create the virtual environment. So Python 3 -m vnv space vnv, and we're creating a virtual environment. I have already created, that's why it's there, but for your case you'll see this folder will get created. Okay, now then you have to activate it. Okay, so let's activate it, activate the environment, and it activated. So we are now inside a virtual environment. Now let's install the Django module. So let's to install it. you have to run python m pip install and django. Okay, or there is option like if you already have the requirement.txt, then you can run pip install then dash r requirement.txt. It will install all the dependencies. I have already done it, that's why I already have all the dependencies list here. But if you not done it for any reason, you can simply install the django first. So let's install it like this. You can see it's already installed. And suppose you don't have a requirement.txt, you can simply run this. Let's say I'm deleting the requirement.txt. Okay, so let's delete it just for the sake for you guys. Okay, I'm removing it, and again I'm generating the requirement.txt like this, pip freeze requirements. So it will see, it will create all the requirement or dependencies list. Okay, so now if you go to instruction, now that you're done with the Django installation, you can check the version and verify it that installed properly or not. So run python then dash m Django then version. Okay, so let's do it, and you can see it's showing the version 3.2.9. So the Django installation is complete. Okay, now let's create a Django project. You can see here using Django admin, you can start a project. So Django admin, then start project, then the project name. I already executed that. Now let me create another project for you guys. So like this. So here you can say project 2. So if we do that, you will see it will create a folder called my simple project 2. So let's do it, and will take few seconds. Okay, and see it's created one folder called my simple project 2. Now if we go inside that, you'll see another same folder name, and there is a structure. Okay, now for our case, if you want to run this particular my simple project 2, we can go inside the particular folder and you can run it. So let me go to that. So my simple project 2, and if you're going inside there, you can run the run server. You can see that manage python manage py, here python manage py, and then the run server. So let's run it, and you can see let's run the server, and it started running, and it's running in this. So let me open a browser and load this. Okay, now let's load this particular URL. You can see here the Django is loaded and working fine. Now let's create a hello world there. Okay, now let me show you how to do it. Now to create a new app, you have to run manage python manage py start app, then the app name. Okay, it can be any app name. I have already executed it. Now let me just show execution how it works. Okay, so python manage, and you are inside, let's see which folder. So you are inside the my project 2. There, from there itself, you have to run this particular python, then manage py, then the start app hello world. So if we do that, you can see it create another folder hello world, and it have the structure. Now I have already did the changes, so just exactly like this. Okay, now let me move to that particular my sample folder, and now let's move into this my previous folder project. Okay, so my simple project there. Now there, like similar way, I have created this particular hello world. There you have to focus on this views.py. Okay, so here you can see I have like from django.http import http response. There I'm defining a function called index, and I'm returning http response hello world. So this is how I'm creating a hello world function. This index function that is returning a hello world word actually. And then in the urls.py, these files might be not there, so you have to actually create this file, and in that particular file you have to put from django.urls import path. Okay, and from dot import views, and URL pattern should be like you are mapping the particular URL with the which function to execute. This is how you do it in the Django. Okay, so path, then actually this blank mean root path, views.index, that is views dot this index will be executed. Okay, and the name is index. Okay, now in the main function, this main semi-simple project, there in the urls.py you will see a lot of urls pattern. There you have to actually include the from Django urls import include and path, and there you can see it, I'm giving hello world, then include hello world.urls. So what I'm doing here, I'm actually including this hello world particular module and its urls. That's how we are linking it. Okay, and for the root path and for the hello world, I'm actually linking the hello world URL. So if you go to the root path, it will show the hello world. or if you go to the hello world URL route, it will still show me hello world. Okay, now let me run it so it will be easy for you guys to understand. Okay, now let's move inside this. We are already in the manage py. Now to run it again, to run this project, we have to simply run the python then manage py run server. Okay, so let's do it. Now let's run it, and now it started. So it's running in this particular URL. So let's copy it and let's open a browser. Now let's load the URL here. You can see hello world. And again, if you suppose you give the URL that you have mentioned here, let's say URL spy like this, it will still load the hello world. So let me show you quickly. So this is how easily you can set up the Flask and Django application. In future, we will have larger projects, so don't worry. But for this particular session, this is just a getting started with the Django and the Flask. Okay, so this is it, guys. I hope you enjoyed this entire course and you learn advanced Python scripting. And now you can start exploring more about the Python and you can work on the actual practical projects. Okay. And if you do like this session, please do give it a like to the video and share this video as much as possible, so the more people actually get reached to, the more people can learn about Python and they can get experience. It will be helpful to them. And if you want to, you can follow me. There is a LinkedIn, Facebook, Twitter and Instagram, and this entire document actually will be available. This time it will be available with the buy me coffee with some very small fee. Okay, just I'm just trying experiment, you can say. And if you like, if you really want to support my work, you can do that via Patreon or via Buy Me Coffee. Okay. And as usual, I hope to see you in my next session. If you didn't subscribe my channel yet, do subscribe the channel and don't forget to click on the bell icon. Okay. Thank you, everyone.